This is going to review inequalities and interval notation. Now, inequalities are kind of like equations, except that instead of a variable being equal to a single number, we're having a variable being equal to a range of numbers. And let's just dive in here. Hopefully this is a review for most of you. We have four basic inequality symbols. The inequality symbols are the less than, the greater than, less than or equal, or greater than or equal. And if we were to use this with an actual problem, we might have something, for instance, like x is less than 2. So this means that x can take on any number that is less than 2. So it could be 1, could be 1.2, 1.22, 1.2222, so on and so on. Or, of course, negative numbers as well. Now we have x greater than negative 1. Same idea, x can be anything bigger than negative 1. Now, the main difference here between the less than and the less than equals, for instance, if we do x less than or equal to 2, the difference between the one up here and this one right down here is the fact that in this top one here, x has to be strictly less than 2, so we don't include 2. Down here, we have x is less than or equal to 2, so x can also be 2 as well as any number less than 2. And the greater than or equal works the same way. Now, one of the things we're going to be interested in is talking about intervals. One of the things we'll get onto later in the course is talking about domain and range and talking about whether they're intervals or not intervals. So if we have a number line here, let's just draw a line here. And let's just put 2 points here. Let's do -1 and then 3. And let's say we were to want to write this. We'll do it as both inequalities and as interval. So for instance, I'm going to look at, and I'll put a point here to include that we are going to include this. So we're going to look at all the numbers between -1 and 3. And so one way we can write this is that, well, -1 has got to be less than or equal to x, and this has also got to be less than or equal to 3. And again, this is referring to all of the numbers between -1 and 3, including both -1 and 3. Now, this is the inequality notation. But there is another way we could write this. Another way we can write this is something using interval notation. An interval notation would simply be, well, in this case, what are the endpoints? The endpoints are -1, comma, 3, and I would put square brackets around them. The square brackets indicate that we include the points and that we have the point -1 included and also the point 3 included. So another quick example here. Let's draw another number line, and then let's just go ahead and put down, this time we'll have a circle here, and let's do this as -2, and then we'll go all the way up to, and we'll put a solid dot here, and let's just say that goes up to 5. So we're looking at all the numbers between -2 and 5, except we include 5 and we don't include -2. So if we were, again, to write this as an inequality, this would be -2 less than x. I don't do less than or equal because I'm not including 2, less than or equal to 5. And then if we did this as an interval, well, the endpoints are still -2 and 5. And then I need to put a bracket, a square bracket, around the 5 because I include it. And then I put a parenthesis by the -2 because it's not included. And just one or two more examples. Let's look at maybe 1 to 5. And we're going to look at all the points in between. Now in this case, I'm not including 1 or 5 in my interval. So the inequality representation would be 1 less than x less than 5, and the interval notation would be parenthesis 1 comma 5. Now there's two other types of number line plots that we can probably see here. One of them would be, for instance, it's not the perfect straight line there, but that's okay. Let's say we started at 4 and we're going to go ahead and include that point. But this time we're just going to go off and we're just going to keep going forever to infinity. So I can't write x less than something and then x less than, greater than something, because, well, x is only greater than 4. It's not less than anything. So the inequality here would be x is just simply greater than or equal to 4. So that would be my inequality. Now, the way we write the interval, you always write the smaller number first, and well, the smaller number in this case, of course, is 4. Now we're going off to, and actually I have a mistake there, I put a parenthesis right down. Let's go ahead and erase this here. So we have 4 as the endpoint, but then we should have a bracket because we're including it. And now we're going off to infinity. Now, infinity, if you remember, is just an abstract concept that we use to represent that numbers go on forever. So you never actually reach infinity, and since you never reach infinity, you always will put a parenthesis with infinity. So this would be the interval notation. And let's just look at one more. You could do the same thing if you went to negative infinity, but let's look at one more here. And let's go ahead and do negative 3. We'll go ahead and include that point, and then we're going to go all the way down to negative infinity. And then let's do 4. We won't include the point, and we'll go all the way up to infinity. So the way you write this inequality is there's not one inequality you can write it as. You have to write two different inequalities here. You can't combine it into one, because what do we have here? Well, we have that x has to be less than or equal to negative 3, or x has got to be greater than 4. And then if you were to do this interval notation, there's actually two intervals here, and you can clearly see that here's interval 1 and here's interval 2. And so if we write this as intervals, the first interval, well, it goes all the way down to negative infinity, so we have a parenthesis there, goes up to negative 3, square bracket because we include negative 3, and then what we use, the proper math symbol here is to use, it looks like a U, stands for union, and then it would be this interval combined with unioned with the interval. Well, it starts at 4, but I don't include 4, and it goes to infinity. Alright, so this has just been a quick review for how you do interval notations and inequalities.